are you going to demand better for yourself? When are you going to stop believing the lie that low motivation, low energy, and brain fog are just simply the default settings that everyone has to deal with? And there's only that small group of high performers that have cracked the code, because that's not the case. You have all of the potential to be a high performer. Unfortunately, modern society is just set up in a way to keep you in this negative feedback loop and really hijack your dopamine system and make you feel like you can't be a high performer and performing at that top level. Today, I'm going to tell you how we can gain control and recalibrate our dopamine system so that we can then go ahead and live up to our true potential and really just take back our lives and be a little bit more conscious in all of our actions. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. My name's Evan. I'm the host of the Elemental Evan Show. And personally, I have navigated my own health issues, and in doing so, I found some very practical and impactful tools that are accessible to everybody, regardless of where you live or your income level, and that's what I share on this channel. So I'm really excited to talk about dopamine and recalibrating our dopamine and ultimately just living a more conscious life. And yes, we're going to jump into that today. So first off, with dopamine, what is dopamine? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical messenger in the brain that is responsible for various bodily functions. But the one we're really going to focus on today is rewards and motivation. And like I mentioned, there's many things that can throw your dopamine out of whack. Some of them being poor diet, poor sleep, addiction, brain injuries, even diseases like Parkinson's disease. But the ones that we're really going to focus on today are going to be focused on reward system overload. So as I alluded to earlier, the modern society is largely to blame for this. It's set up in a way to hijack our dopamine system. And I don't believe it was with bad intention, or at least I don't believe it was. I think that as humanity progresses, one thing we look for is comfort, right? And essentially, how can we receive a higher reward by putting in less effort, which sounds really great. And honestly, it is. Like, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of modern luxuries out there that I personally will not live without. If you sleep on the floor or sleep on a bed, you can obviously tell that, there's some great inventions out there and things that we want to keep in practice here. But there is a little bit of a downside when we look at having to work less for a reward. And that's really where our dopamine system gets thrown out of whack. So in modern society, we have what are known as these quick, high reward stimuli. And these can be various different things, such as video games. A good one is social media, pornography, sugary foods can even be one, right? Anything that essentially draws you in and really gets a grip on you and essentially becomes addicting to a degree. And as well, it just hijacks your dopamine system, right? It's a high reward for very little input. And so when we think of things like social media, which is a very easy one to use, it's so easy to get these little dopamine hits by watching these little videos, and we have to do so little to receive that reward, right? We just pull out our phone and it's right there and we get to, just enjoy all these videos. But what ends up happening is we seek more and more of it because our dopamine is, being thrown out of whack. You have to do so little to get these dopamine hits. And so what happens is you start spending more and more time on your device, right? Because you want to still get that same enjoyment that you once had. So that means you have to use whatever the device is more and more. So essentially, I think it really comes down to things that just start to become almost like a subconscious action. Like, we don't think about it. It's just something that starts to control our day. And when something is controlling us and our day and how we act, and, we're just living by our desires and we're not actually being conscious in our actions, this is where we really start to see life being wasted, in my opinion. And one of my favorite quotes is that life is not too short, but rather that we just waste so much of it. I believe that's very true. So for me, for example, just about 2 or 3 months ago, I was falling into some bad habits personally. I had terrible sleep schedule. I was eating really poorly as well, poorly for my standards at least. I wasn't, getting as much exercise as I usually do. I was spending way more time on social media than I was, accustomed to doing, or rather, more time than I would like to admit. And so ultimately, I just had some bad habits, and it was really difficult to break those habits because at the end of the day, this is where that negative feedback loop comes in. you feel crappy. And so then you subconsciously pull out your phone to scroll on social media. And then you scroll on social media for, who knows, an hour long, right? You didn't accomplish anything. Now you feel brain dead. And maybe you're doing it right before bed. So now, you were supposed to be in bed at like 10 o'clock and now it's 11, 11:30, 12 o'clock. And so now you're not getting as good sleep. So it's just this really bad feedback loop. And yeah, I found myself stuck in it. And so I really needed to shake myself out of the grip that all of these little vices had on me, right? These quick, high reward stimuli. And if you're wondering, why should I even want to try to set boundaries around these things or, improve my dopamine system? My simple answer to that is, first off, do you want to perform at your best level, right? And do you want to enjoy life? Do you want to be conscious in life and be present, right? Because what I noticed was a lot of my actions, I often get asked what supplements I take and what supplements I would recommend, but the real answer is that I don't have just one direct answer because everyone is so unique and it depends on what your health goals are. However, I do always recommend spirulina and chlorella, which is a microalgae from Energy Bits. This is the highest quality microalgae out there, and in my opinion, this is nature's multivitamin. It has 40 plus vitamins and minerals, and spirulina has all 9 essential amino acids, making it a complete protein. As well, this is really good for your mitochondrial health. So if you want more energy, if you want to age better, this is the go-to product right here. It's easy to digest. Everyone, in my opinion, would benefit from including this in their diet. If you aren't already taking Energy Bits, spirulina, and chlorella, go check them out. They're in the description or the show notes. You will not be sorry. This is by far my favorite one, super high quality, grown on triple filtered spring water. This is truly the highest quality spirulina and chlorella that I have ever found, and I know you're gonna love them. Go ahead and check them out. Peace. 2-3 months ago were really just based off of desires, and I wasn't actually consciously making decisions. I was, eating food that was crappy, but, tasted good. I was, like I said, scrolling on social media, doing all these things that really I wasn't making any conscious decisions for myself. I was just like in a program mode, right? So it took really a big shakeup for me to put my foot down and draw some lines in the sand and set some clear boundaries with these things that are hijacking our dopamine system. So first off, the first tool I want to provide all of you with is a little bit more of a gentle and easy tool. And the second tool will be one that's a little bit more intense, but if you're very serious about resetting your dopamine, that's the one to do. So this first one is, you could call it a digital detox. You could call it a dopamine fast, whatever you want to call it. You pick whatever it is that has its claws into you. That's typically one of these high reward stimuli. So this could be, social media, could be streaming services like, watching too much TV. It could be like gaming systems, like you play too many video games. It could be pornography. It could be sugary foods. It could be a multitude of different things, but pick whichever one really has its claws on you, and take that and remove it from your life for 1 to 2 weeks. Now, some people, have a really hard time doing that and it sounds too scary for them. So if that's the case, please at least reduce the amount of time that you're spending on those, whatever it is, social media or whatever. So if you're typically on those for 2 or 3 hours a day, you want to dramatically reduce that down to like 20 or 30 minutes a day, if not even less, right? The ideal goal here is to get down to 0. We want to spend 0 time on that for at least 1 to 2 weeks. And what we're going to do here is we're really going to reset that reward system, right? When we're doing activities that require a little bit of a slower process, right? Maybe reading a book or, going out for a walk, something along those lines. This is going to be a lot slower, and it's not going to be as stimulating to our brains and our eyes and all this. And it's really just going to help have a better balance with this dopamine system. And so it's just really going to allow it to reset. So then when you come back to using social media, hopefully you can put some boundaries in place, which I really highly recommend you do after you do a digital detox or dopamine reset. You really want to have some clear, defined, ideas about how much time you're going to be spending on social media or watching TV, whatever. And as well, I also think that these are awesome tools if you use them in the right way, maybe by consuming longer form content that is educational or going to benefit you in some way. That's going to be better as opposed to watching who knows what on all these social media websites, right? I mean, there's some really like random stuff out there. So those are the things that we want to avoid watching and really try to gain control of our lives. And I mean that very seriously. Like this is a way for us to gain control of the very precious small amount of time that we have in this very precious life, right? When we actually sit to think about it, we have so like time is the one thing that we truly only have a limited amount of, and we just kind of spend it freely, right? And this is myself included, hopping onto social media and just wasting an hour or two away and really accomplishing nothing, right? As opposed to with something that I've been doing here recently is going out for a walk in the evenings with my wife. And sure, maybe we spend an hour walking, but now I got movement in. And as well, I got to spend some really quality time with a loved one, and I get to hear how their day was and actually spend some important focused present time with them. So I think it's really important for us to do that. Now, if you have some very serious issues with, your dopamine being thrown out of whack and you're just addicted to all these different things, my personal recommendation, and granted, this is a recommendation friend to friend. I am not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. So please, before you make any dietary changes or anything along those lines, please consult a medical professional. But for me, the most powerful tool that I have found in resetting or recalibrating my dopamine and just gaining control back of my life and being a top performer has been fasting. So I know fasting is probably not for everybody. I understand that, but just hear me out here. You do not have to do a super long-term fast. I typically fast from 3 to 5 days. That's where I enjoy doing it. But you do not have to do a 5-day fast to receive these benefits. You can do a shorter fast. You could do a 24 or a 36-hour fast and still receive very similar benefits. Maybe not to the same degree, and maybe they don't last as long, but you can still receive these benefits. And as well, work your way up into a fast. If you've never done a fast before, I would recommend doing like a 12 or a 16 or an 18 or a 20-hour fast, and eventually just work your way up. For those of you who have zero knowledge on fasting, I'm sure you understand it's not eating food, obviously. But outside of that, what you can consume, or at least what I consume when I do a fast, is a high quality water, a high quality salt, which I use Oryx salt. I believe it's from like the Kalahari Desert. But that's going to give you some electrolytes. It's also going to have some trace minerals in there, which are going to be very important for you as you go through, especially a long-term fast. And as well, I do consume at least a cup of tea every day during a fast. And the tea has nothing else in it. I drink a pu'er tea, so it's like a black tea. And I don't put any sugar, milk, none of that. It's just pure tea. And yeah, you do that for, however long you want to do it for. And I know there's science behind this, and, we could dive into that. But realistically, from just an anecdotal perspective of what I experienced going through, I did 2 5-day fasts this year. And what I really noticed in terms of the benefit was when we look at food as opposed to like social media, for example. Social media is something that's enjoyable, and yes, it can be very addicting, but you don't need it to live. Food, on the other hand, you have to consume food to continue living. You will die of starvation if you do not consume food, right? So food is something that is absolutely necessary, but we can go a period of time without it. Now, on that note, your body has this innate desire to consume fuel, obviously. So your body will send signals to your brain many times throughout the day saying that it's hungry, it wants food, and you're going to have this desire to go eat. But every single time you override that desire and that little nudge from your body, that's telling you to go consume food, and you tell it, hey, you know what, we're actually fasting right now. We're not going to consume any food at this moment. We're going to ride this little wave out. Every time you do that, you prove to yourself who's in control. You take back control of your life. You impose discipline on your life. And by doing it over something that is literally a necessity of life, we're showing ourselves that we can do so much more. We're capable of so much more. And when you do this over and over and over again, day over day, you're building up, you're putting a little deposit into the piggy bank, and you're showing yourself that I have the willpower, I have the strength, I have the capability to push past what these little simple desires and wants are that are showing up in my brain, right? And therefore, when you break a fast, it is very important to have boundaries set up. You should have a guideline of, the good practices you want to put in your life and the bad practices you want to stop. And for me, the most tangible thing that I noticed from doing a fast and, implementing better habits was simply that when I found myself doing a bad habit like hopping onto social media and not consuming valuable content, but rather just like mindless whatever content, what I noticed was that I would catch myself really quickly and I would pull myself back and say, hey, this is not what I want to be doing. I want to be investing in, furthering my education or, I don't know, spending quality time, just rather being conscious with my time, right? And I was able to stop, put my phone away and, I don't know, get a book or whatever it might be and do a beneficial activity, which was something that I wanted to be doing. So, and I know that sounds so simple. It sounds maybe not even that beneficial, but the opposite of that was me recognizing that I've been on my phone for 40 or 50 minutes. I've been wasting all this time just looking at mindless stuff. And I would recognize that, but I still wouldn't pull myself away from the phone. I would continue on. I would continue scrolling until it just got to a point where finally enough was enough and I could finally pull myself away, right? Or rather, I just like didn't have the energy to continue on, right? So it's really reclaiming your energy. It's reclaiming your autonomy and your ability to just be in control of your life. So if you are tired of, you know, feeling like you're not in control, feeling like you're at the whim of your desires, feeling like, you just have no control over social media or anything like that, I highly, highly recommend that you do some form of a dopamine recalibration here. And I do believe a fast is the most powerful way to do it. You'll notice a massive change in not only your day-to-day life with your relationships and the people around you, but even the work that you do. You're going to be able to focus so much better. I remember the first few days after my fast, I felt like an absolute machine when I would hop on the computer. You're so dialed in and able to just work on tasks very easily. Your full focus is there and you're just zooming through stuff without having to, be 3 cups of coffee in and a bunch of nootropics just to like sit down and do some work. So I found this to be incredibly beneficial, not just from a health perspective, but from just overall a performance level and really showing up and enjoying life to the fullest and not feeling like I was just wasting my time away. And I feel like so many people are stuck in that route or stuck in that rut where maybe they want to step away, but they just don't know how, or they don't even recognize that they're just wasting so much of their time doing pointless stuff when there's so many beautiful things in this life we could be doing and spending our time on, and improving ourselves. But instead, we just turn to these simple, quick, high reward stimuli that eat away our time and provide little to nothing in return, aside from a really jacked up dopamine system. So if you're ready to gain control of your life again, I highly recommend looking into recalibrating your dopamine. You can do it through a few different methods, obviously, and as well, simply getting good sleep, eating a good diet, cutting out the sugary foods, things like that are going to help as well. But if you're ready to just totally make a 180 change in your life, I do feel like doing a fast is just one of the most powerful things out there. As well, I think of back in the day, I took an environmental class in college, and I remember someone asked, like, what's the best thing we can do for the environment right now? And the teacher said simply to stop harming it, because Mother Nature is so, absolutely intelligent that if you just stop putting the bad stuff in, Mother Nature will take care of herself. She'll clean herself up. And it's the same thing with our bodies. We just need to stop putting the bad stuff in. Our bodies are innately intelligent beyond our ability to comprehend, right? And if we just stop putting the bad stuff in it, And I mean, not only food, but also what we're consuming through our eyes and our ears. If we stop putting the bad stuff in, our body is just going to naturally get back on track and do the things it was literally created to do. So, anyways, I highly recommend you give this a look. If you've never fasted before, do a little bit more research and, like I said, check with a medical professional because I am not one, and give it a go because there's so much benefit in this. It's been by far the most profound and beneficial practice and tool that I've used this year in 2025. And I will continue doing it. Every single year. I will do at least one long-term fast because the benefits are just insane. Not only from obviously resetting the dopamine, but even down to the health level. So that's for another episode. But nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed. Please give this a go. Leave a comment if you all found something interesting here or found some benefit in this episode. And as well, feel free to connect, subscribe, do all this stuff you already know, and check out any links below. Would love to connect. And until then, I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you all for tuning in. Let's recalibrate our dopamine and live our life to the fullest and live it consciously. Okay, y'all, much love. I hope you have a beautiful day. Peace.